Hello, 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 hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another public stream. Gonna wait a few minutes for people to join and then we'll start the stream. Don't hesitate to let me know if you can hear me well, if you can see the screen well, and if everything's fine. Bonjour, madame. Bonjour, madame Yu. Yeah, Chilate. Hello, Rooney. Nice to see you. Hope you're doing great. Everything you say is being repeated after. Okay. Bien le bonjour, Toji Poker. Hello, hello, man. Hello, everyone. Have a good day. I hope everyone's doing great. Good morning, Kings Left Gold. Short stream today. Should last approximately 1 hour. Every time I'm saying that, we end up streaming slightly longer than that. But yeah, the main goal for today's stream is the first 2 points, which in my opinion are the most important things to watch, and particularly these Bitcoin daily fight that I'm going to discuss and explain a little bit more when we start the stream. But yeah, we have some crucial fight right now across the boards, with this one on Bitcoin being the main one. I did a lot of chat requests yesterday in the Haven, and maybe I have the block note somewhere. Let me check. And yeah, we can see that. Oh, wait. Up. We can see that I categorize them in good potential, in the sense of already above daily trend, already flipped them, etc., etc. And a majority of the chat requests we did then were in a similar situation, in the sense that we have fights with daily downtrends right now with H4 EMMA compressions, meaning that it's likely trades and setups we could be chasing, but probably a little bit too soon to tell, and likely extremely dependent on the fight we are going to discuss on BTC daily and ETH BTC daily. But yeah, covered a lot of alts yesterday, so if you have any chat requests, that's why I'm saying that maybe today could be a short stream, because already covered a lot yesterday. So if you ask for some chat requests, maybe I already covered them. But yeah, ça se passe aux arcs. I'm not in Arc La Plagne. I'm in les Trois-Vallées, Val Thorens. But I'm actually going to be skiing. I'm not gonna be in Les Arcs. I'm gonna be in La Plagne for a week in January. I haven't skied there for the last time I skied there. I think it was 10 years ago. So looking forward to see how the station has evolved over time. I'm not quite sure we're gonna do the La Plagne to the Arc transition for a day or something. Takes quite some time to do so. But yeah. Il s'agit du Discord à event payant. Yeah. Exactly. But that's also why I'm doing these public streams. And outside of this public stream, I'm not saying that I managed to do so every day, but I'm trying to push daily updates also on CT. It's most of the time mostly Bitcoin, unless I have some very interesting shitcoins to trade. But yeah, I'm trying to push daily updates on CT also, even if, once again, sometimes I'm not gonna be posting for a few days. Very dependent on what the market does, and right now it's also extremely dependent on how much snow there has been in the previous days, basically. If there is a big snowfall, it's likely that I'm going to be AFK. And we are expecting quite some snow for early next week. So that could be in line with potential trash price action leading into FOMC. I don't know. That's a problem for us next week. But okay, I'm going to start the stream. So as I said, 2 main points for me to discuss today. are the Bitcoin H4 and daily updates, and then some discussions about ETH, because we have the first significant break above daily downtrend on ETH BTC for the first time since September breakdown, basically, and since 0.038.5. Would be a shame for ETH if that was to happen right before Bitcoin gets strongly denied. But as I was saying on my stream yesterday in the Aven, is that if we get both conditions of ETH BTC above daily downtrend and Bitcoin breaking through daily downtrend, then for the end of the year and next couple of weeks, we might have we might have an ETH trade. Even if the gap is slightly smaller now, all the way up to daily 100 MA, we are only talking about a 5-10% gap, but that could be enough for a setup to unfold. But we're gonna get to that right after. Let's start with Bitcoin daily first. Don't hesitate to ask a question as I'm doing my updates, and as soon as I'm done, don't hesitate to shoot some tickers for chat requests, and we'll see which one we cover and how long it takes, etc., etc. Knowing that I will very likely be doing a second public stream next week, probably Wednesday. I'm not a big fan of the timing because it's right before FOMC, and maybe the updates we do end up pretty much invalidated 24 hours later. But I won't be on the market for the second part of the week. So if I don't do another public stream early next week, it will be on Wednesday 17th. Which could be maybe more interesting in terms of timings, because that would be post-FOMC, pre-Christmas holidays, which is often a window where we can have some opportunities in the market as a last window to trade the market before New Year. But we see. All right, so as I said, for me, the fight we have right now on Bitcoin is the most important one we've had ever since we lost the daily EMA compression early November. And pretty much ever since we confirmed daily trend to be flipped resistance with that retest of 106, 107. And if we look at all the confluence of this retest, indeed, we have obviously the daily downtrend, as I just mentioned. It's the third retest that we are going through. The main difference with the last retest is that we have managed to break through daily 13 EMA, which could be a good sign, as much as it could just mean that maybe if we don't break, we just chop fast like this all the way to 2026. But daily downtrend, obviously a big fight, and you're gonna see that H4 200 MA gonna play a big role. If you're someone that has been in the Aven or that has been watching my content, watching the streams, you should know that the two conditions when I'm expecting a trend to be broken, whether it's to the upside or to the downside, a close above the trend and -1 time frame 200 EMA. So in that case, H4, because we're on daily, to be broken and flipped. And we're gonna discuss that after. So yeah, daily downtrend plus yearly open. And this horizontal level was also a key reclaim on our leg up to new all-time high in April after the daily EMA gap fills, where we lost daily 100 MA, got all the way back down to daily 300 MA and reclaimed the compression into new all-time high. So pretty significant level when we list all the confluence. And to me, this is the decider of how and what I'm going to be trading for the end of the year. I think that if we manage to break through and flip that confluence and reclaim yearly open, flip daily downtrends, we're gonna have a window between now and the end of the year to fill those two gaps, all the way up to the daily EMA compression that is now resistance, that is now curving down, and that therefore would be the max upside target I would have on Bitcoin if we get any kind of continuation of this pump. So obviously, if we are in a situation where we get daily downtrend broken and flipped, it's extremely likely that I'm going to be leaning to the buy side and to the green side for the next 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how rapidly things develop. While at the opposite, if we get denied, even if that does not necessarily mean that we are going to do a new low, I would consider it as a strong signal that we might need some more time to consolidate and chop fast below the daily trend, which would fit for a reduction of the volatility and therefore likely diminish my interest in the markets short term and going into the end of the year. So to me, and I updated it a few times on CT and in the Telegram channel, this is a pivotal level for Bitcoin alone, of course, but also for a vast majority of the market. And we're going to see it in the chart requests. If we take a look at the chart requests, I can pick one randomly. Let's for example just check Pendle, for example. We can see that Pendle is a good example of the situation of many alts right now, where we have an attempt, a fight with daily downtrend for the first time since October 10th, since that massive breakdown we've got. And obviously Pendle, just like the others, gonna be extremely dependent on the fight we have right now on Bitcoin. If we have a resolution to the upside, a break and flip of daily downtrend and yearly open on Bitcoin, I feel like we could expect coins looking like this to give a leg up going into the end of the year. Not necessarily come back for the full retests, but at the very least give some continuation. While at the opposite, obviously, if Bitcoin gets denied and just turbo chop fast, maybe some alts are going to give some legs up, unless Bitcoin just straight up dying. But you would likely need to be much more selective on the shit coins you're gonna have to pick, in my opinion. So a crucial retest, a crucial fight for Bitcoin. Again, to me, it's the most important one we've had since the 105, 106 region retest. Ever since we got that daily retest and daily resistance rejection, it's been pretty much just sit back, let the H4 downtrend unfold, and don't get wrecked. Trying to be the hero longing, basically. It's been just that for the past, after that bearish daily trend retests, it's been mostly just that. So yeah, very crucial fight. And right now I'm basically sitting, monitoring, watching, waiting to see which section, which outcome we have of this fight, basically. So if you have to leave right now, if you need to only remember one thing from this stream, it's this fight right now. Daily downtrend, yearly open, and confirmation for daily downtrend to be broken if we get a flip and a break of H4 200 obviously, as a confirmation for trend break, basically. All right, so if we dive into H4 to have a little bit more details, I'm gonna remove this. That was part of a discussion yesterday. I haven't touched this chart since yesterday's daily detailed updates that once again you can find on CT over here and or on Telegram if you want. So yeah, no changes. You have the labels on the right. I stand by that. To me, it's a fight to defend a H4 trend plus these previous resistance we've been fighting for. As long as we manage to do so, we still have a gap to fill to H4 200 MA. If managed to get there, but Bitcoin still hasn't been able to give us that retest, which would be the big test for Bitcoin, obviously. The good thing is that there is a good and a bad thing. The bad thing is that the longer it takes, the shakier it gets. But at the same time, longer it takes, the more we are resetting on H4 as we could have expected. But also the more H4 200 MA flattens, and maybe the bigger the chances to break through it. Because obviously the flatter imaginary lines, moving averages, imaginary line, the less respected it is, obviously, because the softer the trend it represents. But yeah, so a fight for H4 trend. As long as we consolidate above and in this region, we still have a gap to fill to H4 200 MA. While at the opposite, if we fail to show any strength in this region and show any strength around H4 trend, I think we're gonna come for another retest of H4 100 MA and the key 88-89K region up to 90. And as you saw a few minutes ago. There was a setup that we were discussing yesterday in the event that we could be interested to take, but I want to add some precisions to that. This is a setup I could be interested to take, but it's not a definitive setup in the sense that the entry could be lower. The stop loss is not definitive, but most importantly, this is not the kind of setup that I'm willing to play with resting bids, mostly because of the Barty nature of the move we've had, and like this move. It's been pretty much bar up, bar down, bar up for the past 10 days now. And yeah, just because of that, not feeling comfortable just leaving bids left and letting them feel or not and pray that we just don't blast through it. So I could be interested in playing this if that's retested before we fill the gap to H4 200 MA, and I would play it manually. I have alerts set, as you can see on the right, and I would let the retest happen. If I see that we end up closing above H4 100 MA, I would likely give it a shot. And if I miss it in the sense of retest into very strong bounce, I'm perfectly fine with it. The main reason I'm perfectly fine with it, obviously, is simply that we keep in mind that the bigger picture and the main fight is on the daily. And if I have to miss a retest and bounce into H4 200 MA, I'm perfectly fine with it. The big trades to take from here after these bounces would be depending on the break or not of this region, for me at least. So yeah, pretty much that. I feel like the labels of each regions are pretty well descriptive, and in my opinion are highlighting what can be everyone's focus for each places. So once again, defend H4 trend, flip the previous high support, and I think we fill the gap to H4 200 maybe before any other move. At the opposite, if we start cracking through this region and failing to flip the previous high support, plus showing no defense of H4 trend whatsoever, which, by the way, has not been well respected for the past 10 days, basically blast through it, lose it, reclaim it. If we fail to do so, all eyes on the retest of H4 100 MA and 88, 90K region. And the most pessimistic scenario would be that we once again fail to show any strength in this region. I'm saying most pessimistic scenario, not necessarily or not only price-wise. That would obviously suck price-wise, as I think we could very much retrace back to the 85K if that was to happen. But also most importantly, because if you remember what we discussed for the daily picture, I said that this fight was important price-wise, obviously, but also in what I would be interested to trade going into the end of the year. And that if we ended up with a strong rejection from the daily downtrend, at best, my main assumption, unless external news pumping the markets, or dumping the market actually, would be mostly chop fest in this range that we've been forming until early next year. And therefore, it's a pessimistic scenario in terms of opportunities, trading opportunities on Bitcoin. Likely, very good news if you are a good range trader, but vastly less good news for me who are much more interested in catching gaps and playing trends, basically. Okay. So I think if you need to keep two things in mind of these Bitcoin detailed updates, it's the fight for H4 200 MA, because it's managing to break and flip it or not is a key condition for the daily downtrend to be broken. And the second thing, obviously, is the fight on the daily that I already yapped a lot about, but the confluence is major. And it just fits a lot of systems, meaning you can expect a lot of people watching the market, watching charts, to have this region as a key region. If you're a trend trader focused on imaginary lines, then it's daily downtrend. If you're a more classical price action trader, you have the yearly open plus this significant horizontal level that goes back to January basically. So yeah, it's a lot of confluence across various systems. So likely a place to be very watched. Very watched. BTC 100K or 88K, let's see. I would say short term, it's more 95K or 88K. Why I'm saying that? Because 95K would be H4 200 EMA, while H4 100 EMA would be 88K. It's more 89 now. So that would be 89 or 95K for me. And at this point, the two places I have alerts, as you can see on the right, it's H4 200 EMA region, slightly below, and H4 100 EMA. It's likely the only two places that, if traded, would make me trigger some setups, or at least be interested in catching continuation or rejection. Chat request, Pengu. Okay, it's actually one that I did not cover yesterday, so with pleasure. And by the way, as I said, you have the chart available on CT, the two ones that I just showed, so Bitcoin H4 and Bitcoin daily. And as usual, I will be posting all the chat requests we cover on stream in Telegram, the free Telegram section, where I post some detailed daily updates also. Pretty much the same one done on CT, but it's my Twitter feed without the shitpost basically, which can be a good majority of the posting depending on market conditions. So I'm dropping the link in the chat if you want to join it. Krillin said it had potential in today's video. Okay, I will be checking if it has the Krillin timestamp or Krillin approval, then it means I need to take a look at it. I missed your entry on FARC. Where are you waiting for bid to the rest of your position? Okay, I'm gonna cover ETH before, because it's the second main fight, the second main interest for me, and then we go into shitcoins, and I will be discussing Partcoin obviously, as it's one of my positions, even if I am only very partially positioned. I have 20% of what I would want to have eventually, mostly because I'm very careful right now. Once again, keep in mind that everything we are going to be discussing at this point, so the rest of the market, is a dice roll and is a 50-50. It's more than a dice roll. It's a 50-50 depending on the fight we have on Bitcoin and the outcome that I just discussed. It's important to keep it in mind, because as I showed with Pendle, we have a lot of fights with daily downtrends across the board, and it's likely going to be BT deciding which side it gives. So keep it in mind. But okay, if you've been watching the streams over the past 2 months, or my updates on CT, or if you've been in the Haven, you should know that when it comes to ETH, my main I'm a boomer, but my main focus has remained focusing on ETH BTC over the past few years, and it allowed me to avoid the entire ETH weakness for the past few years against Bitcoin, at least. Just focusing on the daily downtrend and waiting for significant break of the daily downtrend to then focus on it. And basically, ETH BTC was stuck below daily downtrend against Bitcoin since mid-September and 0.038.5. That was a extremely clean break of the daily downtrend. We can see that it blasted through H4 200 EMA, so confirmation of trend break. Obviously, the rule that says that for a trend reclaim, you want to have trend close above trend and 200 EMA broken. It works for the upside, it works for the downside, obviously. So yeah, I've been mostly just watching ETH fighting below daily downtrend. Took a scalp last week when it was retesting the lows, or the recent lows and this clean horizontal level, but I ended up getting target one quite rapidly up to H4 100 EMA, a very classic gap fill setup where we break the trend and you aim for the 100 EMA gap fill and ideally the 200 EMA gap fill. But it ended up breaking, kicking me out, and bouncing back to h4 200 EMA. I caught the end part of the move, but yeah, I would have preferred obviously to just capture the entire move. But overall, the main thing I've been watching when it comes to ETH has been this fight with daily downtrends. And I've been waiting for that two conditions that I just discussed. Close above daily trend and 200 EMA broken. And we have plenty examples on this daily downtrend of why I have these two rules. If you look at all these daily trend retests, sometimes we closed above daily trend, and you could have expected it to be a break of the daily downtrend. But thanks to the second rule of no longer until 200 EMA broken and flipped, we can see that all of these attempts ended up immediately shut down by the incapacity to hold above H4 200 EMA. Every single daily trend retest ended up being H4 200 EMA rejection, slight close above, immediate shutdown. So this is why I have this rule. It's not a perfect rule. It's gonna have fake outs like anything when it comes to technical analysis and astrology for men, but it's a fairly decent one to avoid fake outs. And this time we can notice that we quite well blasted through H4 200 EMA. So that's why I'm saying it's a significant break through daily downtrend, and the first one we've had since September. So personally, my main focus, if I have to long something between ETH and Bitcoin, is gonna be ETH as long as this is true. So as I said earlier, if I have the two conditions of ETH breaking daily downtrend, which is the case, and Bitcoin breaking daily downtrend, which is trying to do, fighting for it, then I believe we have a window for ETH outperformance going into the end of the year. The worst case scenario for ETH, and it would be a very Ethereum thing to do, is if Ethereum starts outperforming Bitcoin, but only to die less. Basically, if Bitcoin gets denied by daily downtrend and just dies from here and retraces back to 84, 85k, we could very much see ETH BTC fill the gap to daily 100 EMA while being down on USD. And it would be the worst case scenario, because that would mean, oh yes, cool, if BTC is finally outperforming for the first time in 2-3 months, but it's just because it's dying less. So obviously that would be the worst case scenario. But at the opposite, as written over here, if we have daily downtrend broken on Bitcoin and daily downtrend flipped on ETH BTC, then it means ETH is a better long, and ETH is to be expected to outperform, which is once again the case today. So basically, what does that mean? On ETH BTC, what you want to see is that orange box over here, which is daily trend plus H4 200 EMA region. In that case, if that gets retested, this is your must hold. And if it gets retested plus Bitcoin above daily trend, this is your opportunity for ETH trade. If we go into the USDT pair, without too much surprises, this is the fight right now with H4 200 EMA. And I don't want to jinx it, but it looks promising. It's a fully flat H4 200 EMA. It's hovering around it. ETH BTC looking good. In a world where Bitcoin doesn't shit on us and at least gives us H4 200 EMA instead of just dying, I feel like maybe ETH can come for the H4 300 EMA retest above. Maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic and maybe it doesn't happen today. But if Bitcoin allows it, that would be the next main gap to chase on the USDT pair. Oh, oops. So yeah, that's my main takeaway when it comes to ETH. Ideally, defend H4 trend, consolidate around H4 200 EMA, and if Bitcoin allows it, give us the next gap fill. Otherwise, very similar to Bitcoin. Obviously, would expect a H4 100 EMA retest. I can remove that. That was from yesterday. I'm writing this down, but I will be sharing it in the Discord, in the Telegram, as I said. Ah, okay. So not definitive setup, but continuation idea. The higher H4 trends gets, the better the invalidation, better, tighter the invalidation. If this can't develop, all eyes on H4 100 MA retests. Very similar to Bitcoin, but the main difference is that considering if BTC look, maybe it's more interesting to chase. Okay, I'm gonna do something for the today I'm gonna make a list of all the chat requests we are covering so that I can then push them in the Discord, in the Telegram. That way you can have access to the chats after the stream if you want to get back to them. I already shared the Bitcoin ones before. Before I forget, on BTC H1, we have, in my opinion, the fight for 93k right now is also important for the flow of the day. I believe that if we reclaim 93k, we are good to at least chop and ideally give H4 200 MA. At the opposite, if it starts to crack down, then I think this is the moment we get the 88, 90k retests that I discussed on H4 earlier as a potential setup. So the 93k fight that we are seeing right now on H1, in my opinion, is a important fight. But yeah, I think you can understand my appeal for ETH and for the market in general, but again, I think the fight we have for the daily downtrends and the yearly open is going to be a strong decider, and it's going to be the difference between all of us avoiding the crypto discussion at Christmas and and us being happy. You always have very strict rules in your system. Do you think you could automate your system with an algorithm? I don't think I have a very strict rule with my system. To be honest, these rules, the rule of the close/reclaim, so that rule over there, is kinda the only strict rule I have, to be honest. If you look at the system, but obviously because it's so significant, like whether a trend is lost or reclaimed is going to be a strong decider for me, a strong trigger to execute trades, or at least have interest in taking a trade. But beside this one, I have templates of setups of how things tend to unfold and where I want to pay myself, etc., when I'm playing gap fills, for example. But the truth is that outside of this, because I'm trying to trade trends, there is a lot of gut feeling in the end. So I would not say I have strict rules. I would say I have one very strict rule that I tend to stick to, which is this one. But beside that, I can't think of other strict rules I have, to be honest. I have conditions that I try to respect, such as if the trend is lost and 100 MA is lost, expect gap fills or these kind of things. But that's more for the analysis part. When it comes to the execution, and the more I trade, the more gut feeling has a strong place, basically. But yeah, So do I think it could be automated? Because of what I just said, I think it's could be complicated, but not impossible. I'm sure that someone smarter than me and someone better at trading than me could very much use the basis of my system, tweak it around, adjust it a little bit more, and maybe automate it more. But you probably would need to dive deeper in statistics and the win rate of certain conditions and setups. But I'm just way too dumb to do it. Like, I'm gonna be brutally honest. I'm too dumb to do that. But maybe if someone smarter than me want to try it, they can. But probably gonna maybe use the basics of my system to do so. But probably gonna have to tweak it around a little bit, in my opinion. So my age is better gut. I would say so. I would not say better gut, but I would say strong PTSD and a passion for paying myself. But yeah, I do think that trust in your system, simplicity in the system, experience of the market you're trading can be strong edges by themselves. What is the boomer market doing today? It's been very choppy this entire week so far. It's been a very choppy week for SPX. This screams pre-FOMC week kind of price action. Seconds, I have to answer a text for a minute. And then we do chat requests. So if you have any tickers you guys want me to check, shoot them now. Okay. Yeah. Clean fight with the level I just mentioned, 93k. I say key one to fight for. This is the decider for the afternoon. Can you do SPX 69? Yes, I covered it yesterday, so that should be pretty straightforward. But I think I've seen some questions before. Hello Pierre, hope you're doing well. What do you think of QBTS in equities? Let's take a quick look at it. I'm gonna cover Fartcoin first for Toji question earlier about where I would be interested to beat the rest of my position. Finding it hard to hold trades to TP in this condition, and I can't decide whether that's a good thing, taking profits when it's there. I definitely understand your point, Rooney. Personally, the approach I have most of the time, but even more now, is that profit is and be a take profit maximalist. And if any doubt, don't forget that not everything is 100% when it comes to trading. You can very much just partially position, partially exit, partially pay yourself, partially cut. So personally, in those conditions, like I'm gonna use this trade from ETH from last week. I ended up taking some profits here and then decided to take more in that compression. And even if it was not fully filled to the target, the decision was mostly I'm in profits. It's the first long I'm attempting on ETH in weeks. I'm gonna be happy with paying myself and I won't hesitate a second to re-enter later if needed. But if there is a moment, again, for me, it's always the case. But I would argue that if there is a good moment to be a take profit maximalist, it's now. So I understand the fact of that was not my initial plan at first, or that was not the detailed plan that I had at first. But I would argue that if you are hesitant in paying yourself, that can likely mean you're not comfortable with the position you're holding. If you're not comfortable with the position you're holding, unfortunately, as much as you prepared it, you are increasing the chances of taking a bad decision immensely. And if the bad decision has to be paying yourself, then it's the best bad decision to take, basically. But again, I'm a very take profit maximalist, so the PTSD is strong with me, as you can guess. But as I always say with PTSD is that, especially for mid-curve traders like me and statistically like you, most often than not, it's gonna do well and it's gonna benefit you more than it's gonna cost you. Most often than not. Can you do SUI as well? Yes, I covered it yesterday, so that should be pretty rapid also. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you, Baguette Printer. Thanks for joining. As usual, appreciate your support. You're always here. Means a lot. See you on CT and for the next stream. If but on 3D tells us 5.0 trading, and I'm gonna check. I did not check, but I would assume it's a fight with. Okay. That's quite the messy chart, isn't it? It's a key battle 100%. EMA wise, it's harder for me to have a clear read on something like this, mostly because fully flat moving averages. The 3D downtrend is pretty clean and could fit a move back to 3.4k. That would be a H4 300 ml retest, and that would be a 3D downtrend retest. So could be aligned. But as we are seeing it right now anyway, as much as ETH looks promising and as much as it's fighting with H4 200 MA, you can feel that it's only gonna be able to let it go and potentially fill the next gap only if Bitcoin allows it. And on the short term, as I said, it's likely the fight that we have for 93k that's gonna be the decider short term. I'm very curious to see how far ETH retraces if Bitcoin comes back for 88, 90k, and how far if it comes all the way back down to H4 100 MA, or if it manages to find the floor before compared to ETH to Bitcoin. While at the opposite, again, I do think that if Bitcoin reclaims 93k and consolidates above it, we could see ETH not even waiting for Bitcoin and filling the next gap first. But maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic. I insist one last time, then chat request, but everything we are discussing, everything we're gonna discuss is extremely dependent on this absolute crucial fight we have right now. All right, let's do the chat request. I'm going to start with Partcoin. So the question I had so first I'm going to explain a little bit more why I particularly like Partcoin compared to many across the board. So for me, every time I've been checking Partcoin over the past few months and pretty much since the summer, am I in regular? Yeah. So pretty much it's been in the same daily downtrend since 1.3 basically, and since the July top. And I've avoided trading Partcoin ever since, and it's a shame. It's something I'm extremely ashamed of, and something I'm very disappointed in myself. And it's something I already discussed a lot in recent streams, how much I was disappointed in the complacency I've had over the past few months, meaning that I've had very good timings and exits when it comes to trading shitcoins. Lately, Zcash was a good example. Once again, good exits, good timing to decide to stop chasing longs, but at the same time, I also missed very easy short on that bearish retest and a potential 38% move to catch to the downside. And this can be applied to Filecoin, of course, that has been in a very clean daily downtrend. But pretty much the entire market, right? That like there is virtually zero excuses for me not to be shorting these daily downtrends, because I would be all over those daily uptrends. So, but again, I discussed that already extensively in recent streams. I'm not gonna spend another 30 minutes being mad at myself. But okay, so what I was trying to say is that compared to many shitcoins right now across the board, Partcoin is one of the few that has already closed above daily trend, retested it, and defended it. Once again, if we take Pendle example, which is a very classic example, but I think Sui is in the exact same situation. All of them, as you can see, are still very much just fighting below daily trends, and therefore still have another push to show for strength, and are in most cases in H4 EMA compressions, meaning that they are stuck in a potential chop fest scenario and chop fest region. While at the opposite, we can see just by the structure of H4 EMA on Partcoin that it's much more compressed and it's already closed above and defended it. So it's a vastly better looking structure on H4, and obviously translates on the daily by a daily trend flipped. And when I see these conditions, for me, the immediate conclusion and hypothesis is to try and capture a gap fill up to daily 100 MA. If we were riding a daily uptrend, this kind of daily trend break and flip would make us expect a retrace down to daily 100 MA, like ZEC is doing right now, by the way. Strong trend, lose the trend. I will be waiting for daily 100 MA. Maybe I don't get it, but the system calls to wait for that. Same thing for Partcoin, but at the opposite direction. Daily trend is flipped, so my main assumption is to expect the gap fill to daily 100 MA as long as the rest of the market allows it. And my main goal will be to enter on daily trend retests. For now, that's the idea. So Toji, if you're still around, Toji Poker, my main goal would be to enter on daily trend retests. But I'm gonna be watching current developments very closely. And actually I have an example of that for you. Because right now we've seen H4 trend being defended 2 times over here, but can we say that it's already in a H4 uptrend? A little bit hard to say. So short term, my goal would be to aim for daily trend retests, which is still in confluence with H4 trend over here. So basically, if we see a rejection today and a retrace down to H4 100 MA, I'm a buyer in this entire region. But if during the next few days or next few H4 candles, hours, we start seeing H4 trend catching up and being defended like this, then I might flip my focus on H4 to chase entry and to enter the rest of my position. Because right now I have 20% of the position. So I'm in no rush. for now, the idea remains to be a bidder in the daily trend and H4 EMA region. Exactly like discussed yesterday, I can put the H4 100 MA a little bit higher. And ideally as close to H4 100 MA as possible. And if we start seeing acceleration from Fartcoin, and if we start seeing that H4 trend is well respected above, then I will likely flip to H4 and aim for H4 trend retest entries, basically. And I was saying that this reminds me of something. This structure reminds me of what we had on TAO daily before it did a push some weeks ago. It kind of reminds me of what we are seeing here. We've seen something like this on TAO, where we had the exit of EMMA compression, some consolidation while trend caught up, and then it gave a leg up. If I'm not mistaken, Dash did something similar, but I think it was on H4. Or maybe I hallucinated it, possibly. But I possibly imagine that. But you get the point. It's one of the very few strong coin around. It's the entire H4 EMMA structure is starting to curve up, which is the first time in ages for Fartcoin, basically since 113 and since the last leg up. And it's ahead of most of the shitcoins I'm watching. Once again, most of the shitcoins I've been watching in the recent chart requests are fighting with daily downtrends, are in H4 EMMA compression structures. Pump is in a similar situation, if I'm not mistaken. SPX is in a similar situation. Link is in a similar situation. While on Fartcoin, as you can see, structure is already flipped. Obviously, for Fartcoin to fill the gap to daily 100 MA, it's likely gonna need Bitcoin to not shit the bed and the market to not shit the bed. I guess that goes without saying. But yeah, that's the main goal for me. So Toji, if you're still around, for now, as long as, and particularly as long as daily trend and H4 trend are in the same region, this place remains the place we want to beat. But in the next few H4 candles and in the next couple of days, if we start seeing H4 trend being defended on H4 parts, then maybe we're gonna flip the focus back to H4 and try to catch a position, catch compounding, catch rest of the entry off of H4 trend retests. So that remains the main goal for now. So as long as D1 and H4 trends at same region, the idea remains to beat this area and trade odds, basically. And trade odds. And if we have a follow-up where H4 trends strongly defended, we'll dive into H4 to chase, enter rest of the position. Invalidation remains for now. Loss of H4 100. Okay, thank you. Question about your system. What do you put your stop loss? Took trades with the trend and get stopped because it goes a bit below than the trend is defended. It depends on what kind of setups I'm chasing. So most often than not, I will be looking for the confluence of horizontal level plus moving averages. What I consider a plus setup is a setup where I'm gonna have the confluence of a clean horizontal level and a trend or 100 MA or 200 MA or 300 MA to work with, simply because the stronger the confluence, the less I can let my brain fuck the execution up, and the more I have to trust the system, basically. So most often than not, it's gonna be that. And ideally, I never want to keep my invalidations too tight below the trend, simply because it's the same thing done with an horizontal level. If you trade a support, an horizontal support retest like this, like price action has been doing this, and you come for this retest, you're obviously not gonna have your stop loss, or maybe you're gonna have, but I guess you're not gonna have your stop like this. You want to ideally give it the opportunity to potentially deviate a bit below, and then adjust your size accordingly. Basically, it's the exact same thing with imaginary lines, and it's the exact same thing with a trend. It's nothing more than an imaginary line is like an horizontal line. So you need to have a buffer, in my opinion, to place your invalidation. No, I don't have a perfect rule on that, in the sense that I am not putting my stop every time 2% away or 1% away or whatever. I try to place it at a place that makes sense to me, and again, ideally in confluence with invalidation. For example, here I'm not a big fan of my invalidation. Maybe it's too tight with 100 MA. And that's also why I only entered 20%, by the way. It's so that if it comes for the retests, I can enter the rest of my position while keeping my risk in check, because I can adjust my invalidation. I'm not fully sized already. But I don't know if there is a perfect rule for that, for you to avoid these being perfectly wicked out. But by the way, this is also why I have this rule of for a trend to be lost, you need to have a close below plus 200 EMA lost. Often because when you're gonna play the retest, you can use where is the 200 EMA on the -1 time frame for your invalidation. But yeah, so do you put it under horizontal level? I'm talking about where trades, there is no like 100 EMA, 200 EMA, H4 for clear invalidation. Again, most often than not, I want to have the confluence with an horizontal level. The only situations I'm not gonna be chasing that confluence, I'm trying to finding you an example. It's when we are trading what I call in our educational content the trend following setups. I'm looking for the educational content from the Aven, because I think that I have examples of that. Okay, so it's this. In your educational library on the Aven, you have an article about the not counter trends, the trend following setups, which I believe is more what you are talking right now, when you don't necessarily have gap fills to play with, and it's more trend-based following setups. In that case, you have a template with the invalidation, but as you can see, even in those situations, and that's an ideal example, obviously, but I always try to have invalidation in check with the retest of a trend plus an horizontal level. Again, this is an ideal example, so it's not gonna be always that clean as was OM at the end of last year. But that's the best answer I can give you, in the sense that it's mostly what I'm trying to look for. And I would even go further than that. I would say that if I don't have this kind of confluence, often it means that I'm going to be disregarding the setup, because, as I said earlier, the messier the invalidation, or at least the less clean it is, the more I know that I'm increasing the chances of my monkey brain to fuck the execution up and find excuses to cut the setup too soon, or find excuses to keep the setup too long. So yeah, to answer your question a little bit more precisely, I would say that most often than not, I'm looking for the confluence of horizontal level plus the trend at the very least. Then I try to leave it a buffer for it to deviate, in which case you can use the -1 time frame 200 EMA to give you an estimate of how low it can be. So if you're following an H1 trend, you don't want to see 15-minute 200 EMA to be lost. So that can be your buffer below the H1 trend. That would not need to be broken. And I would add one thing is that try to see the way the shitcoin you're trading or the asset you're trading tends to behave. Is it something that tends to be pretty wiki, pretty Barty, something that tends to be punishing, or something that tends to respect the trends very cleanly? If we use Zcash as an example, we can see, for example, that on the very first legs of the trend for Farcoin, for Zcash since the 50s, it was defending daily trends extremely cleanly, rarely dipping below, rarely weakening below. In that case, that gives you an indication of how aggressively you want to be beating the trends retests, but also how tightly you can keep your invalidations. Because even if, unfortunately for you, it's one of the cases where it ends up weakening too far, worst case scenario, you're stopped and you were right and it dies. Best case scenario, it once again follows the same pattern and you're set. And if / when it stops being the case, it's a strong indicator for you to back off. And if we keep using Zcash as an example, by the way, for these trades, the two ones you can see here, when we discussed them in the Haven, one of the main things we said was we are going to be aiming for a retest of the highs as a main target. But this is the first time this entire rally that the daily 13 EMA is not defended. So we're going to keep the invalidations much tighter and much more aggressive. And in that case, we adjust the way we trade the shitcoin in particular. So I don't know if it answered all your questions, Toji. But I hope it does. And if it doesn't, don't hesitate to reformulate and I will try to answer in more details. New to streams and really enjoying it. Which indicator do you use? Simply, so for me, actually, you know what? Maybe I have this from. So a set of 6 moving averages. What I usually call the trend is the combination of 13, 25, 32 EMA. The truth is that you can simply use 10 to 30. It works just as fine. I'm using this as a legacy of the old days trading against bots on UOB in 2018-20. But basically anything between 10 and 30 is a good indicator of the trend. And then I'm using 100 EMA, 200 EMA, and 300 EMA as for gap fills basically, and targets when playing gap fills and for compression setups. But that's the only thing I use, and then horizontal levels. In trendy conditions, I tend to use Stocher SI, but again, it's only fitting in trending condition, and I usually treat it as a third priority indicator, in the sense that I could very much trade without it. Okay, let's continue the chat requests. First, we can see that indeed the must reclaim level so far is doing us dirty. As long as we are below, we keep our eyes on the 88, 90k region. Let's see if it's defended or not, but we can see well why it was marked as a must reclaim. A simple H1 trend fight, basically, very standard for anyone playing with the system. So yeah, that's the main idea. That's the main idea. Okay, we can move on to the next chat requests. So Farcoin, that's covered. I consider things to be pretty clean. And yeah, remaining bullish as long as daily is above daily trend and as long as H4 is above H4 100 EMA. As long as it's the case, and hopefully in a world where Bitcoin, even if it doesn't break the daily downtrend, doesn't just completely dies out, then I think it's possible we get daily 100 EMA. I will be paying myself before we get to daily 100 MA, as with the targets showed here, that I'm very likely to front run in those orange boxes. But eventually, if slash when where daily 100 MA would be my last target, if the market is kind enough to give it, basically. Okay. I'm gonna speed run SPX and SUI because I did cover them yesterday and I already know how they look like. And and it's summarized with those two charts. So the main idea, you remember what I said when we discussed Fartcoin and why it looked interesting to me? I said it looked interesting particularly because it was ahead of the rest of the shitcoins, because it was already above H4 EMA structure compression, and it was already above daily trend, retested it, and so far defended it. So it was fairly clean. Now we can see that SPX is kinda trying also, but it's still very much fighting around the daily trend, which is very flat. And usually if I open a chart and I see this around the trend on any time frame, I know that if I'm going to go on the -1 time frame, so H4, I'm gonna see a compression between 100 MA, 200 MA, and 300 MA. It's always the same structure. And when I'm seeing this, which is also a big part of the system, and once again in the educational library for the Aven, there is a strong coverage of these kind of compressions. When I see something like this, unless I manage to capture a move at the extremes, so whether it's 300 MA or 100 MA, my main takeaway is usually to sit out and expect a slightly bigger compression, wait for things to tighten, and then respect the direction that has been picked. We discussed earlier with Baguette Printer the few strict rules I had in my system. I can think now of a second strict rule I have. So the first one is the close above daily trend, break 200 EMA on the -1 time frame for the trend reclaims. But that's in conditions of trends. When I'm playing around the EMA compression, one of the rule I have is if slash when we have a trend defended outside of the compression, whether it's to the upside or to the downside, this confirms the exit of the compression. This is a rule I have to avoid potential deviations and fake outs outside of the EMA compression. I'm going to show you some examples with the Bitcoin daily chart, particularly with the one last year. Last year was a fantastic EMA compression, but you can see that it had plenty of deviations. And every time it tried to exit the compression to the upside or to the downside, immediately the trend was not respected and we were back inside the compression. While at the opposite, when we started to exit and the compression was much tighter, we started to defend the trend, 1, 2, and then we sent. We have another example of that in April this year. We can see full daily EMA gap fills. We start losing daily 300 MA, immediately get back inside, trend not defended. You know that it's not a confirmed breakout. At the opposite, we close above 100 MA. This time trend is defended, confirmed breakout. Unfortunately for Bitcoin, recently, EMA compression, we start losing daily 300 MA. This time daily downtrend acts as resistance, breakdown. So that's the second rule I have. But what I'm trying to say is that, therefore, on SPX, on something that looks like SPX right now, my main assumption, I'm gonna be waiting. I'm gonna write it down on the charts, and it's gonna be the exact same thing for things like Pendle and SUI, etc. You're gonna see it's the same update on most chart requests. This is why when we did the chart request yesterday for the Aven, we ended up categorizing them in the one that are already above daily trend and could therefore be main priorities, and the one that are 50-50 depending on the way Bitcoin fight ends, because they are in H4 EMA compression. coins mostly fighting with around daily trend that could deliver EMA compression a bit more before getting fully ready. Likely some 50-50 depending on BTC and if BTC fights. And you can see that we have Pendle, Pump, SPX, Link, Sui. All of these are in extremely similar situation. So unless you count an entry near / at H4 100 MA, at this point, wait for trend to be defended outside of EMA compression equals trend defended above H4 300 MA or trend defended below H4 100 MA, and then trade the trend development, basically. So yeah. Keep this in mind because it's very likely to be the exact same update when we're gonna open the SUI and other charts. But in itself, this is already a fairly clean trading plan to have. There is obviously the case where outside of technical analysis, you actually have some conviction in the development of the coin, in which case you can very much decide to partially position yourself within the compression. Ideally, the tighter it is, the better it is to do, because it means that even if you are not playing exit, you can have a fairly tight invalidation no matter which direction you pick. So the tighter the compression, obviously, the better the positioning. And once again, you can see this with the example of the trade last year on Bitcoin. This was much more appealing to start positioning ourselves in this region with the context of US elections, plus the fact that the daily MMA was very tight, because it meant that the invalidation we had was much tighter. While if you started to position yourself here, end of the day, you would have had a better entry than me at the end. But at the same time, if your invalidation is the loss of 300 MA, you're going to have a very, very wide invalidation. So it's the same thing for something like SPX right now. If you want to position yourself before the exit of the compression, whether it's to the downside or to the upside, perfectly fine in my opinion, but ideally the tighter the better, basically. Because so that's often true. And that's what he said. But in that case, yeah. So chop past the MMA, wait for this to break, and I'm actually gonna, it's very unlikely that I trade SPX, but I'm still gonna set some alerts just in case. If I can't find anything more interesting than this one, maybe I will go for it, but quite unlikely in my opinion. But yeah, so again, very similar situation. If we take a look at SUI, I didn't even put it in my, and by the way, yeah, this is the way it looks on the daily, obviously. And this would be T1. And then anything that gets close to the EMM compression is end target. But this is in a world, I think this is only possible in a world where Bitcoin goes back to 100K for a bearish retest. But that's another story. Maybe if Bitcoin goes for 97, 98K, it could be enough for this target one to be hit. But again, we are discussing a scenario where things end well, which hasn't been the case much lately, and in a world where the H4 EMM compression resolved to the downside, to the upside, sorry. But the two main gaps to chase on the chart that looks like this for me are these two ones. I'm gonna include the two charts in the Telegram so that you can have access to the two charts. Okay, I did cover SUI yesterday, but I surprisingly didn't put it in my watch list. So this is what I said for SUI yesterday. I said looking 1-1 link, so link, pendle, etc. Fight with daily downtrend, but very wide gaps on H4. If in the okay. I think we can update the chart by lowering H for 200 EMA, which should be slightly lower by now, but I don't have anything to add to this update because it's very much just the same situation. As I said at the beginning of the stream that this would likely be a pretty expeditive stream in terms of chat requests, because in most cases, in the current market conditions, if you watched one alt, you watched a majority of them. It's often true, but it's even more true in current market conditions. And it's still very much a fight for daily downtrends. And I think now maybe it's even clearer for you guys why I've spent the first 30 minutes of the stream saying that the fight we have on daily Bitcoin and the fight for that daily downtrend plus yearly open is going to be a strong decider of what I'm trading by for the end of the year. And you can understand it well, because depending on the result we have and the outcome we have on this fight for Bitcoin, obviously Bitcoin breaking through daily downtrend is going to increase the odds of something like SUI to do the same, and therefore trigger some potential interest for longs, while at the opposite, obviously, if Bitcoin denied by daily trends, it's hard to imagine that shitcoins don't get denied by daily trends too. So I think you understand well now my overall thoughts and idea when it comes to the markets. And you know what? I'm gonna copy paste what I said yesterday, and I will share it also in Telegram. I'm gonna copy paste what I said yesterday for these chat requests as a main conclusions. So most coins fighting with around daily trends. If focusing on these coins, focus the one with the tighter H4 EMMA compression, which is exactly what I said for SPX 69. I'm not saying it's. I said that if you had to focus on something like this, favor the one that have much tighter H4 EMMA compression. And again, likely some 50-50 depending on BTC and ETH, and if BTC fights with daily downtrends. I'm gonna keep that conclusion that that I shared for after yesterday chat request in the Haven. That was I always try to give some main conclusions and main thoughts after chat requests or while we are doing chat requests, so that maybe it adds a little bit it adds some context to the chat requests, and maybe it helps members knowing better what they want to focus on or not. I think we can also add this: if we get all the bullish condition scenario, which are Bitcoin above daily trend and ETH above daily trend, then a lot of these alts around above daily trend could give some nice legs off of BTC strength. Otherwise, most of them likely just end up as bearish daily retest. I will add this at the end of the chat requests and at the end of what I will be sharing on the Telegram after the end of the stream. Okay, Bitcoin still very much getting brutalized by the 93K, more than clear. It's clearer now why I said it was the must reclaim, unfortunately for BT short term. It's gonna be very interesting to see if we get a reaction here or not, but we cannot be surprised. That was we started the stream saying that that this 93K on lower time frame was likely the pivot for the afternoon, and we can see perfect retest, perfect rejection. So yeah, so clean it hurts. Reclaim 93 or give us 88.5, 95, 90.5. could very much just also just do that, by the way, but you get the point, you get the point. We keep an eye on it, we keep an eye on SPX. Very precise, thank you, with pleasure. Thank you, with pleasure too. First time watching live, heard about you from Maine. Just wanted to say appreciate the daily updates on X. With pleasure, with pleasure. We've been doing that for the last 7 years now, so may as well continue to do so. I've always said that to me it was very important to... I don't think I would have ever become the trader I am today if it was not for the time I spent sharing things on Twitter and sharing things on Telegram and sharing things in the Haven. It has helped me improve immensely and be much more selective of the setups I would take, much sharper on the analysis I'm trying to make. But also something that I believe is very important, when you write analysis for others, not necessarily for others, but when you write analysis expecting them to be read, you have to make them as clean, as simple as possible, or at least as straight to the point as possible. And inevitably it makes them better and easier for yourself to stick to them. And that's why I very often encourage people to obviously journal, but ideally even better, journal publicly. If not everything, obviously you can keep some conclusions for yourself, but sharing stuff online in a Discord, on Twitter, outside of the very few in the end shitheads that might be bad with you, you have more upside than downside doing so, in my opinion. Okay, next one. Next one would be Pengu. Pengu. Interesting. Compressing on H4? Above H4. Okay, it's a different structure than the one we've been discussing so far. The main structure we've been discussing so far were fight with daily downtrend. Here, I can tell you that we are far from daily downtrend. It should be around 0.13. Yeah. But it can be interesting because it has wide gaps to chase. What's gonna make me interested in chasing gap fill setups is, and which are, by the way, counter trend setups. If you are chasing a gap fill, it means you are going against the higher time frame trend. So what's gonna make me appealing to me is how big the gaps are. And once again, in the Haven Web Educational Library, sorry, for the template for gap fill, so counter trend setup, as I just said, in the conditions that I have for the setups to look appealing to me, the second condition is wide gaps to chase. And it makes sense, right? It just means that you potentially have a better error in the setup. What were the examples I shared? Okay, so this was, once again, very ideal example. Maybe this one is better. Okay. Oh, I messed up the screenshot on this one. But yeah, so this one could look appealing to me, mostly because it has wide gap fills. And in current market conditions, the ones I can think about that look similar but with smaller gaps are ING, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you can see it's pretty much similar structure with wide gaps to chase to go to H4 200 EMA. I think AVAX was similar, kind of. But you can basically take this analysis on ING and replicate it on Pengu right now. Meaning that you mark down where H4 200 EMA is. H4 100 EMA plus H4 trend, which is going to be what you don't want to see lost anymore. So it's going to be your must hold. This entire block over here and slightly below, you can go on lower time frame to see if it fits. It fits pretty well. you will want to aim this as a at least target one, especially if it fits with an interesting horizontal level, and you will want to front run it T1 slash main target at least half off, if not more. Front run it. And then a setup like this. Yeah, and you can likely have an even tighter invalidation than that. It's already a 2-hour setup, which is more than decent. And obviously, there is a world where we go for H4, what, 300 ml, and we go for the full gap fill. By the time we get there, it's extremely likely that H4 300 ml will be lower than this. So usually what I write down is H4 300 ml equals target 2, wherever it is, because it's gonna be getting lower, similar for H4 200 ml. So you're gonna have to adjust your targets. But it's obviously the case when you're taking a setup against the trend on a higher time frame. Inevitably, your target gonna get lower as the trend catch down with price. But yeah, okay, I understand very well why Krillin is interested in that setup. It looks like something Krillin would be chasing, to be honest, or at least would be interested by with 4. So I'm not surprised. Okay. Can have a wider invalidation, particularly if you manage to get a lower entry. But overall, H4 close, sub H4 100 mg, I'll get the fuck out. Okay. It's actually a third in that. It's a third category. Stuck below daily trend slash in H4 EMA compression. The majority. The ones with wide gaps to fill to even just retest V1 trends. Very few. Okay, I'm going to do all the work for you. And I'm just like I did yesterday for the Aven members, and I'm gonna categorize these chat requests for you. Category 1, we've had Partcoin in our chat request so far. Category 2, category 3. I don't even know if is category an English word, or am I projecting my French? No, it's a word. It's a word. Okay. I thought I was losing it for a minute. Category 2, we had SPX and SUI. And so far, category 3, we had just Pengu. Okay. This is what I'm going to share in Telegram and maybe on Twitter. Okay. Well, once again, I said I would be streaming only for 1 hour, but it's obviously been 3 hours. Nah, category is a word. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Sometimes it's been 2 hours of streaming. I remain French. It's already good that I speak English, right? We cannot say it's the same, and it's the case of most of my compatriots. So I will say that after streaming for 2 hours, you can give me this. You can allow me to be to have a little broken English. Okay, there was one that I just deleted like an idiot. QBTS, it stonks, but like let's take a look at it. Who asked for it earlier? It was Savola. D-Wave Quantum, wow, that looks good. Apparently I looked at it recently. I've seen someone mention this one the other day on CT. But I can't remember in what conditions I've seen that. But it does look good. I would assume just by the name of it that it is AI at least related. It looks very good. At this point, Savola, for something that looks like this, if you get your daily close like this today, I think you want to beat that retest in the blue box over here. Down to a sweep of these lows. I think this is a buy. It you know what it reminds me? So it's not the same structure 100%, but it kind of reminds me the way we could be playing BCH from here, in the sense that it's breaking above daily compression. Obviously, it's a much different structure, but basically you want to be beating the retest of it after that. So for something that looks like this, Savola, this would be my most obvious immediate plan. You have the confluence of this horizontal level, initially a support, breakdown, resistance, blasting through it again, confluence of daily trend plus daily 100 MA. So I would assume you can be a buyer in this region, spreading bids over there, and then depending on how optimistic you are, you can spread your target at logical horizontal highs, and keep some in case it goes for a push for all time high, basically. But that would be must close daily above here. Then this area becomes a bidding region. And it's a little bit like Fartcoin. Earlier when we discussed Fartcoin, the main idea was that as long as the daily trend and H4 trend were in the same region, you keep bidding the confluence of them. But if in the next few days H4 trend starts being strongly respected, you can dive into lower time frame to chase entries. You can probably have a similar approach with this one, in the sense that you wait for it to close that way on the daily. If it closed that way on the daily, then retests of daily trend plus daily 100 MA are likely things you want to beat. And if it doesn't give you the retest and it just keeps pushing, you go into H4 and you wait for H4 trend to form. If it was a shitcoin, this would actually be my first target as H4 100 MA. So that would be more the target one. And if it was a shitcoin, I would be expecting something like this, with H4 EMMA compression into a move later. That would, but again, it's not a shitcoin and it's AI, so maybe it just blasts through it, but that would be my main take, Savola. I'm sharing the chart in the chat. I'm not gonna include it in the chart request for today because it's not crypto related. But it's a fairly good example of the system. It's actually a very good example of the system. Strong trend, the trend breaks, we chop around the trend, retest 100 MA, new leg, retest 100 MA. It actually trades like crypto used to trade a few years ago. 100 MA perfectly defended, strong trend, trend breaks, trend 100 MA compression, resolve to the upside. It reminds me of Bitcoin in January 2023. Strong trend, lose the trend, 100 MA trend compression, reclaimed, sent. And yes, I can tell you how Bitcoin chart looked like almost every week for the past 7 years, I think. Okay, so that's gonna be it for today, for today's stream. Before leaving, a quick summary. On lower time frame, the fight you want to watch today is the fight for 93k. If it's reclaimed, we are good to chop and maybe even tag it for 200 MA. As long as we are below, you keep an eye on the potential 88.5 90k retests, which is a crucial level to hold on H4, as it is H4 100 MA region. And you can see how well we dived by failing to defend it on Monday. So obviously, if we were to retest it, this is a place you want to see a strong defense. So first focus to have 93k fight as a must reclaim. If it's not reclaimed and if we dive further, then it's 88.5, 90k that you want to see defended. Third focus, H4 200 MA, obviously, as main upside target short term. And if you're long, this is the place you pay yourself if/when retested. If you're looking to short, I still think that this is the most, it's the last place for bears to show up. So that would be the best place to do so. So 93k on H1 as a must reclaim. 88.5 up to 90k as a must hold if we dive further. H4 200 MA as upside target. And when we flip to the daily, if you're not interested in lower time frame price action, then in my opinion, you can set some alerts above H4 200 MA, set some alerts above 88k, and wait to see how this fight unfolds and wait to see who wins this fight. Depending on how Bitcoin behaves now, and depending whether we reclaim the daily downtrend into a bounce to daily 100 MA, or we get denied by daily trends, it's likely going to influence the way you're gonna trade short term. And I have summarized that for you guys in today's chat request / stream notes. And conclusion is that a majority of the market is in a similar situation, fighting around daily downtrends. If Bitcoin breaks to the upside, maybe we're gonna see some gap fills. If it fails to break daily downtrend, I would not expect these shitcoins to do well. If the rest of the conclusions were, if you have a case where your shitcoin is compressing on H4, you can very much decide to position yourself in advance. Otherwise, you can wait for the trend to be defended outside of the compression. If you decide to focus yourself before the resolution, try to do so on shitcoins that are very tight on H4, that have very tight H4 EMMA compressions. Partcoin, one of the best looking shitcoins around. The focus is on daily trend as a must hold. If BTC, a fight to stay above daily downtrends. If USDT, just like Bitcoin, a fight for H4 200 EMA. We can see a rejection once again. And I think that summarizes pretty much everything we discussed today. So I'm gonna shut the stream off for now. I'm gonna be sharing these in the Telegram right now. Up. Actually, up here is the link to these posts. If you want to join the Telegram, it's free, and I share some updates in there. And I will be sharing that also on TradingView, on Twitter, like in a minute, so that you can have access to it also. Better that way. And yeah, that's it. That's it for today's stream. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the chat requests. Thanks for the questions. And I will see you all either early next week, either next week, early next week it has to be. If it's not the case, it would be on Wednesday 17th. But ideally, I would prefer to do another stream early next week. So I will let you guys know. I will post on Twitter if/when I'm going live, and in the Telegram also. And I will give you guys updates. I will give you guys updates of when I am streaming or not, and where am I streaming or not. Obviously, quick word about the Haven, but if you find these streams interesting, it's a taste of the content I'm doing in the Haven in general. So if you want to give it a shot, if you want to check by yourself, don't hesitate to check by the link on my channel. You have several options. You have an option with just the access of the educational content, which is very good, obviously, but you can also have access to the full Discord, and there is also a free version, which is a newsletter where we give weekly snippets, weekly views of the content that's being covered in the event. So it can be also interesting, in my opinion, for you. So don't hesitate to check if you are interested, and if you have any questions regarding this, don't hesitate to contact me, ask me your questions, and I will do my best to answer you as soon and as fast as possible. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks again, and I will see you guys on TT.